to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink, cause I think I'm going all in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Flying Wheel Podcast. I'm still your host, the Mex-Canadian. And boy, it's been a while, hasn't it? I kind of got burnt out for a second there. And then a bunch of other stuff happened with my job and whatnot. But we're back. The same deal is going to be. It's going to be the same deal. You know, it's going to be whenever I'm able. This podcast is going to come whenever I'm able to, and basically just kind of when I feel like it at this point. But at the same time, I do want to put this out at least semi-regularly. So I am going to try and commit to at least 1 to 2 episodes a month. Just because, I mean, like I said, there's between my job and other stuff that goes on in my life, it's hard to get this out as often as I would like. So I will try to commit to at least 1 to 2 episodes a month. And hopefully you guys can live with that, because I don't get paid for doing this. I'm doing this just because I want to do it, and just because you guys listen to it. So that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for sticking around and just hoping that I come back essentially. And I did promise some stuff, you know, that I would be putting this out semi-consistently, stuff like that, before I took this break. And I did fall on that promise like I did on a few others. I'm really bad at keeping those promises, but my life has just been so hectic that it's been difficult, and I do sincerely apologize for that. But we're going to get right into it, and the first topic we're going to talk about is something that has been on a lot of people's minds as of late, and that is the Seider and Raymond contracts. A lot of people have been worried. Realistically, they've been pretty worried about it, and fairly so. You've got your two big young stars in Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond. They're not signed yet. They're RFAs, so basically they don't hold much power in the negotiations. The Red Wings are really at no fault at losing them, and they've practically got until December to get them signed, which I really hope it doesn't come down to that, because not having Mo Seider or Lucas Raymond for more than a few games is like having them out for like 3 months is going to be disastrous for this team. Like, you may as well just pencil them in as a lottery team at this point. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, because there's been a lot of comparables thrown around. Also, sorry in the background if you hear that. That's my fan. It's hopefully I can edit it out, but it's going to be difficult for me to do that. Kind of, not really, but it's just been really fucking hot at my place lately, and I don't want to run my air conditioning too much. So I've just got my windows open, fan going, stuff like that. I apologize if you can hear it. I will do my best to edit it out. But yeah, like I was saying, Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond don't really have much power to stand on. They don't have much of a leg to stand on in the negotiations, and this is largely due to them being RFAs. The team holds all the power. The only way that Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider can go to another team is if somebody offer sheets them. Eisenman and the Detroit Red Wings trade to somebody for their signing rights, or that's about it. I mean, I think if you go to December, then you become a free agent or something like that. I'm not 100% on that. I know the same deal kind of happened with Shane Pinto last season for the Ottawa Senators. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because like I said, there have been a lot of comparables for signings that have happened that can be compared to Raymond and Seider. One of the biggest being, as it comes to Lucas Raymond, is Seth Jarvis. Seth Jarvis signed an 8-year, $63.2 million deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. And Seth Jarvis is probably the closest comparable to Lucas Raymond and the contract. And that's largely because they're almost the exact same player. I would say Lucas Raymond is a bit more electric, but it's definitely something to keep a look at, and something that I'm sure Lucas Raymond's agent is going to be bringing up in negotiations, or already has brought up in negotiations. Dave Pagnotta tweeted out a little while ago that the wheels are in motion with the Raymond contract talks. There's been no news on the Seider contract talks, which leads me personally to believe that they've pretty much got that deal done. They're just waiting for him to come back over from Germany, because both Seider and Raymond are in Germany right now training. So that's what I imagine they're waiting for with Seider. And honestly, it's probably going to be the same deal with Lucas Raymond. I can't imagine that these contract negotiations took the entire span of the offseason to make, especially with training camp coming up. I got to imagine that the deals are practically done at this point. Dave Pagnotta tweeted out, which it's Dave Pagnotta, take it with a grain of salt. He's tweeted out some shit that has, at least half of the shit that he tweets out doesn't come true. So take it with a grain of salt, but he did tweet out and report that Lucas Raymond's camp and the Red Wings are looking for long-term deals, which was obvious as far as the Red Wings go. There was some contemplation with whether or not Raymond's side is going to want a long-term deal, because he didn't have the best sophomore year, but he blew up at the latter half of this year. So it was definitely a conversation on whether or not, okay, he didn't really shoot to the moon. Like, he was great the entire season, don't get me wrong, but towards the end of the season, like the second half of the season after January, February, he really exploded. So there was some talk thinking that, okay, they'd want a shorter term deal because they don't know if he could keep this, if this was just like flash in a pan, or if this is really what Lucas Raymond is. Personally, I think this is what Lucas Raymond is. I think he's a 35 at max 40 goal guy who has the ability to score 80, 90 points. And there's really not too much more to it than that. He's decent defensively. I think he has some work defensively to take care of. But when he was drafted, he was touted as a primarily offensive with some defensive upside winger. Now he's not going to be the first person you throw out on the penalty kill. Hell, he's not even going to be the second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth person you throw out on the penalty kill. But he did get a little bit of penalty kill time last season, and very rare instances where I think one game, I can't remember which one it was, both Fisher and Rasmussen, I believe, were in the penalty box, so he got put out there with Larkin for the penalty kill. Or no, it was Joe Veleno and Christian Fisher, because Joe Veleno is normally on the penalty kill with Dylan Larkin. And I'm going to talk about Joe Veleno in a little bit, because there's been some discussions about that too. Primarily in my own camp, because I think some things that a lot of people don't think, but it's whatever, we're going to get into that. But yeah, it's encouraging to know that both camps are interested in a long-term deal. That only works, that can only help each other, because Lucas Raymond not only gets his money, but he also gets the security knowing, okay, he's likely going to be on this team for 6, 7, 8 years. He doesn't have to, be apartment shopping after 2 years, because he may or may not get re-signed. He's not going to be worrying about where he's going to be playing next, stuff like that. So that is a good thing for both sides, and it can only help with the cap situation, because right now it may look like it's good, but Detroit's cap situation kind of fucking sucks. They've got just over $17 million to sign Lucas Raymond, Mo Seider, and Johnatan Berggren. Now, there is still the potential that Johnatan Berggren does get traded, yada, yada, yada. Dave Pagnotta said the same shit, but I don't believe he does. And, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he does, but I don't think he will. Dave Pagnotta also tweeted out that a Berggren contract was likely before training camp, which wouldn't surprise me at all. If Berggren's going to be on the team, you're going to want to have him signed and in training camp, much like you're going to want Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider. They're all RFAs. None of them really have a leg to stand on, but you don't want to take the risk of not having them signed by the beginning of the season or missing training camp, because we've seen it time and time again how slow somebody can start when they don't have a proper training camp, and that's that. It takes them probably too long to get up to speed. We've seen it with Andrew Kopp in his first year. He missed the entirety of the training camp his first year of the contract because of his abdominal surgery, and he was bad for the first. I wouldn't say he was bad, but he definitely wasn't the Andrew Kopp, the $5.25 million or whatever he signed for Andrew Kopp that you'd want him to be. And he does still have that potential in him. Granted, I don't think he's worth over $5 million. I think he's $3.5, $4 million at best, especially if you're paying him to be your third line center. Now, granted, when he did come over, when he was signed, he was being paid to be the second line center. He did good in that. He fulfilled that role decently. He was better than Pius Suter was. So, it's there's a lot of variables to that contract. But at the end of the day, I've lost my train of thought. That went on a tangent that has made me completely forget what the fuck I was talking about with the Raymond and Seider. And Berggren. So, yeah, you don't want any of them to miss training camp. Granted, they're not going to be missing training camp for an injury, so they'll still be training, but I don't believe they can attend Red Wings training camp itself unless they are under contract with them. So, or a PTO, but they're not going to be under a PTO because they're RFAs, yada, 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 good, all that good shit. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes out. I don't think there's any reason to be too worried. The only thing I'd maybe be worried about is if they don't get signed by training camp, then maybe be a little bit worried about how they might start the season, or if the Red Wings are going to start the season without them, because you don't want, like I said, you don't want to start the season without Raymond or Seider. You want to have them locked down in training camp and ready to play at the start of the season, because missing those two, like I said, will be astronomically bad for the team if they miss any amount of significant time for any instance. So it's because, I mean, not only is that top six just like the top six looks good right now, the top line looks like it can be compared to most other teams' top lines. Maybe not cup contenders yet, but it definitely looks like that top line of Larkin, Raymond, and likely to Brinkett will be able to match up very well against other top line stuff like that. They'll be an average. I would imagine they'd be a league average first line. Then you get on the second line, probably a league average second line too. Kane, Tarasenko, they're not necessarily young, but Confer's there as well, so he can cover for their defensive liability, stuff like that. Then you've got probably pretty above average third line, which is likely, at least I hope it is, Kopp, Rasmussen, and Fischer. That line worked fantastically last season. I hope they stick together. And then you got the fourth line, which will likely be Mott, Veleno, and Berggren. And I this is where I want to talk about Joe Veleno, because I think I talked about it in one of the other podcasts, but I'm just going to reiterate it here. I think Joe Veleno and Johnatan Berggren will work fantastically together. A lot of people don't think that. A lot of people think that you have to put Johnatan Berggren on in the middle six with, like, a lot of people think that he needs to be in the top six. I don't believe that. I think he's at best a decent second line winger, but like, he got Moonline as a second line, but it in the end he's a middle six guy. He's not going to be your first call to the first line. He'll probably not even be your first call to the second line. You'll probably put Rasmussen up there before you put Johnatan Berggren in case of an emergency. So, yeah, it's definitely a situation, but a lot of people don't think that him and Veleno will work well because they don't think Veleno has a lot of offense. And while granted, he did have career highs last season, and granted, those career highs were amounted to like 12 goals and 20-something points, I think. But that's an average fourth-line guy. I think Veleno, and because Berggren's a playmaker too. Not only is he a goal scorer, but he's a playmaker. He knows how to get open. He knows how to find people that are open, and he's patient. He has an incredibly high offensive hockey IQ, and I believe him and Veleno's got an incredible... he's got probably the best catcher and release shot on the team, and it's pretty good if you look league wide. He's probably, I won't say up there with the best, but he's good enough to compete, to be in that conversation. And he doesn't get the chance to utilize it very often because who the fuck has he ever partners like? Like, who's he on the line with half the time? I mean, shit, last season he was on a line with Austin Czarnik, Zach Aston Reese. Fucking, there's like Sprong he was on a line with, and so I think if you put him and Berggren together, it'll be great. Plus, somebody needs to cover for Berggren's defensive lapses. You'll probably have Mott there who will help, but Veleno's no slouch on defense either. There's a reason he's on the penalty kill, and a lot of people don't seem to notice that, which is wild because he's on the penalty kill with Dylan Larkin. Like, he's regularly put out there with Dylan Larkin, and if I remember correctly, the penalty kill lines, as far as the forwards go last season, where the first one was Kopp Comfer, second Fisher Rasmussen, third Veleno Larkin. So I don't understand why people don't see that in Veleno. Probably because he's still got the same air of the Zadina draft on him, because they were drafted in the same year. Veleno and Zadina were both drafted in 2018. So yeah, was he in the 2016? No, 2016 was Chalowski. He was 2019, was it? Let me double check this real quick. Draft history, because I don't want to be wrong about this. I really don't want to be wrong about this. Let's see here. He was 2018. All right, I had that right. I don't know why I didn't trust myself on that one. It was pretty fucking obvious, but it's whatever. I was right regardless. But yeah, it's definitely there. There's something there, and he can definitely bring it in. And it's like I said, it's definitely got to be I'm saying definitely a lot, but it's got to be the whole Zadina draft thing, because Zadina did not pan out. We'll get into that in a bit, obviously, but Zadina did not pan out whatsoever. And I think a lot of that's still rubbing off on Joe Veleno. When a lot of people forget, Joe Veleno was, the 30th? Yeah, he was the 30th pick in that draft. Like, he was quite literally, what would that have been, the second to last pick? Yeah, that was the second to last pick. So, I don't know what more you want from him. He's basically a second-round pick at that point. And, hell, most second-round picks don't even make the NHL. Granted, we've seen that a lot as of late. Logan Stankoven, I believe, was a second-round pick in the Costa draft, I believe. So it's happened, and I don't know. It's just something. Yeah, Logan Stankoven was a second-round pick. It does just baffle me that people seem to be this down on Joe Veleno when he hasn't really done anything to make people think they should be that down on him. He is playing like you would expect a second-round pick to play, and he is playing like you would expect a fourth-line guy to play. Granted, when he was drafted, he was probably pictured to be more of a middle six guy at the very least, but he's a fourth-line player who can moonlight as a first-line guy. Like, what more do you want from him? Because he didn't look out of place on the first line last season when he was put up there when Larkin was injured, and even when Comfer was injured at one point, I believe he was on the second line. So, yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of things going on with the Red Wings that make people nervous, and it's just one of those things that's gonna have to be dealt with as we go along. I do have confidence that Seider and Raymond are going to get signed soon. I do have confidence that Joe Veleno and Johnatan Berggren can work as a pair, and I don't know what else to say besides that. It's incredible that I'm one of, not the only person to think this way about Berggren and Veleno. And even with Seider and Raymond, a lot of people are really concerned, which, like I said, rightfully so. But there are people that are, like, calling for Yzerman to be fired because it's taken so long, and it's like, all right, first of all, no. Second of all, we are talking about the Illages here. If the Illages want Yzerman to do one thing, it's to make sure that they sign players for as low as amount of money as possible. So yeah, it's something that people just have to not concern themselves about with too much. And so, speaking of Zadina and a few others, Zadina and Kubalik, Filip Zadina and Dominik Kubalik, if you guys don't know who I'm talking about for whatever reason, they have both signed in the Swiss League. Yeah, Filip Zadina was definitely a bust. I think it's safe to say. I wrote an article about this in the Octopus Thrower, by the way. I'm a contributor at Octopus Thrower. If you guys do not know or remember, please check it out at www.octopusthrower.com. We are part of the Fansided Network, and I am loving doing all of my work there. So please check it out. But I wrote a shameless plug there, but I wrote an article a little bit ago about the hype up and fizzle out of Filip Zadina. And it details, I'm not going to read it fully, but I'll give you the synopsis of it, essentially. I go through how Filip Zadina was hyped up during his draft. And he was hyped up to be a 30, 35, 40 goal-scoring winger who like he just scores goals, and he even said himself, he was quoted in saying, "I bring the goals," and the infamous quote, "For all the teams that skipped me, I'm going to fill their nets with pucks, or the back of their nets with the pucks," something like that. And he just didn't do that, at all. And it's a bit baffling, but he didn't do it. Straight up, he didn't do it. And granted, Yzerman's seen what was possible from him, so he gave him an extension. What was it? 3 years at $5 million total or something like that. So he gave him the deal, and the next year he left. After the 22-23 season, he didn't. I don't know what happened with him, but he obviously wasn't happy with his spot on the team. He thought he could do more. He took a bet on himself, went to San Jose, got like $1.2 million, something like that, and for 1 year, and he didn't show up. Like he got 13 goals. I think it was like 12, 13 goals, and that's not what you wanted to see from him. That's not what San Jose probably wanted to see from him. He was probably hoping that he could get into the form he was expected to be on a worse team, go to a different team, get a contract, and continue his play there, but he just wasn't able to do it. And it's pretty obvious that Filip Zadina is just not the guy that he was expected to be drafted. He was hyped up like hell. He was hyped up like no other prospect almost in that draft. Because he was expected to be like a top 3 pick. So when he dropped down to 6th for the Red Wings, it was ecstatic. People were singing the heavens. It was like Ken Holland would be an idiot not to take this guy. This guy is going to score like 30, 40 goals every season. He's got to take him. And so he took him, and he was bad. Like I said, I can't blame Ken. I can blame Ken Holland for a lot of the wrong picks. Like Dennis Cholowski, don't think was the right pick. Was a good pick. Granted, all of the offense and whatnot was there. You could see what he was capable of. He just didn't put it together. Rasmussen probably wasn't the best pick for that spot, which I love Rasmussen. He's become a capable and fantastic NHLer, but he probably wasn't who you wanted to pick at 9th overall. Filip Zadina was the guy you wanted to pick at 6th overall. Like I said, Zadina was projected to be a top 3 draft pick, and when he fell to 6th, everybody was ecstatic, and we all hoped and prayed and thought that he was going to be the saving grace of a flailing Detroit Red Wings team at that point, and he just wasn't. Like in his total career in the NHL, 262 games, he has 41 goals, 50 assists for 91 points. He hasn't even reached the 100-point mark, and he's 4 seasons into the NHL. Like that's absurd for somebody who was drafted so high. Now, granted, Veleno has 30 less games played than him and has 30 goals, 34 assists, 64 points, but you didn't expect 30, 40 goals from Veleno. You expected probably 15, 20, maybe 25 goals on a good season for Joe Veleno, especially being drafted at 30. So it's something that fans have gone back and forth on a lot, but personally, I do believe Filip Zadina can be considered a bust and is a bust, and possibly the biggest bust in Detroit Red Wings history. Just in terms of potential talent and where he was drafted and the hype around him, I think he was probably the biggest bust in Detroit Red Wings history based off of those. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. You guys can let me know on Twitter, twitter.com/the_MexCanadian. You can find me there. You can also follow the podcast at the Flying Wheel Podcast. What's the name of what's the @ on here for the podcast? Yeah, it's just at Flying Wheel Pod. So easy to remember, I guess. I'm sorry, guys. This was a bit of a on the whim episode, even though I had planned to make this episode, but then things happened. I got sidetracked, and I just forgot to record it when I wanted to yesterday. Hopefully this comes out today. God, I hope it comes out today, or else I'm going to be a liar again. I don't like being a liar. Regardless, that's not the point of this. But yeah, Filip Zadina, Dominik Kubalik have both gone to the Swiss League. And it is a bit shocking for both players simply because they both seem like they can be they're capable NHLers realistically. Like Zadina is capable of being a bottom six, 15 goal scoring winger. But I guess just no teams wanted to give him a chance. The speculation is that I think 3 teams had had contacted him about being interested, stuff like that, including the Buffalo Sabres and the Montreal Canadiens. But the rumor is they were just PTOs, so I guess he didn't want that. He was probably looking for a contract in itself to do that, and they just wasn't there. He just didn't prove enough to show that he deserves a contract right out the gate. Kubalik is a bigger shock to me, though, because Kubalik, when he was on the Red Wings, he had 25 goals, I believe. Let me double check that real quick, because again, I don't want to be fucking wrong, because he was on for the 22-23 season. Yeah, he had 20 goals, 25 assists, 45 points. He was third in scoring for the Detroit Red Wings, right below Perron and Larkin, of course. So he wasn't bad. The problem was in Ottawa, where talent goes to die, apparently. I mean, look, it's obvious. Look at Kubalik, fucking Kubalik. You had Chikrin, Tarasenko. You just had talent goes to die in Ottawa, apparently, and nobody knows what to do about it. But yeah, in Ottawa, he only had 11 goals, 15 points in 74 games. He played almost the entire season, but I think the last 30 games of the season, he had, 1, 2, 3, he had 3 points. So that's not a winning strategy if you're Ottawa to keep him in the lineup. So I don't know what went wrong there with him, but it's unfortunate because he's got middle to bottom. He's got middle six capable scoring potential. He can score. He will score. It's just I don't know why he didn't score. So it is surprising to see them both go over to the Swiss League. But it's not abnormal because Jacob De La Rose, who was a former Red Wing, then got traded to the St. Louis Blues and then just not re-signed, has been in the Swiss League for the last 2 seasons, except he hasn't been in the Swiss League. He's been in the Swiss secondary league, not even the top Swiss league, where he is a decent middle six forward. That is incredible. That man got drafted in the 2nd round, I believe, and he just flailed in the NHL. Oh my God, did he not do anything? It's wild. It's just incredible. And like I said, he's not even a middle six guy in the Premier Swiss League. He is a middle six guy in the 2nd tier Swiss League. It's incredible. So there's at least 3 former Red Wings in the Swiss hockey leagues over in Switzerland. So that's something that's happened. Another thing that's happened in Red Wings land is the Prospect Games roster for the Traverse City. I don't know why I said Travis. I've lived in Michigan my whole life. Come on. Traverse City Prospect, air quotes, tournament. It's not even a tournament anymore. It's just between Detroit and Dallas. It was at one point Detroit, Dallas, Toronto, and Chicago, I think. No, not Chicago. Yeah, Chicago, I believe. I can't remember for the life of me. That was a year ago, you guys. But they have the Prospect Games roster that was released a few days ago. And there are a few names that you guys may recognize. Michael Brandsegg-Nygaard, Nate Danielson, Andre Beecher. He was drafted in 2024. Emmett Finney, Alexander Dossett, Jacob Ryklowski. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And then as far as defense goes, Shai Buium, and I believe Virgilio is also a Red Wings prospect. No, I was very wrong on that. He is not a Red Wings prospect, which means I believe the only defensive prospect Detroit has going to the Prospect Games is Shai Buium. Now, granted, that is because Axel Sandin Pellikka is staying in Sweden. for at least another year, so he's, playing and practicing with his team over there. Branson Nygaard was doing the same thing. Their season starts sooner than the NHL season does, so Branson Nygaard was doing the same thing. He was playing preseason games, stuff like that, but he's decided to come over and try out go to training camp for the Red Wings. And I would say, from what I've seen from him in Sweden on the preseason and whatnot, and even in the Olympic qualifiers, I would say that he's got a greater than zero chance of staying in North America. Granted, it won't be. It's not necessarily up to him, but it also is, because he's got the entry level contract Detroit signed him to this year. So realistically, they have all of the power there. They can tell him where and where he's not going to play. But odds are, if he wants to go back to Sweden, then Detroit will loan him to Sweden. That allows the contract slide, yada, 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 which only helps Detroit in the long run. I think you're allowed, 2 contract slides per player? So, per prospect, I should say. That's entry-level contracts only as well. So, it'll be interesting to see how he fares. Nate Danielson, interested to see how he plays as well. He's he's one of the 3 that will be definitely fighting for a spot on the Red Wings next season. Alexander Dossett, I really want to see what he's made of. He didn't show a lot in his when he was in the Griffins last season, and he played decently well in the ECHL as well. So I'm interested to see what Dossett has. Raklovsky performed really well in the Prospects tournament, like the inner prospect tournament that they have every year, that Detroit has every year, 2 months before the season starts, something like that, right after the draft and whatnot. During prospect training camp, I believe it is. And then Andre Beecher looks like he could be something. Emmett Finney, I'm interested to see what he's going to do. Unfortunately, Emmett Finney is going to have to go back to the CHL. I believe he was playing in the OHL. And he's going to go back to the Kamloops Blazers, because the CHL NHL contract stuff is stupid. I think if a player is good enough to play in the AHL, they should be playing in the AHL and not have to be forced to go back to the OHL, because then you're just stuck in this growth stunt where you've got this kid who's proven he can play at a professional level for the most part. He played games with the Griffins in the regular season and in the playoffs, and he looks decent, but you won't know what he's truly made of at the pro level until he gets a good, solid season under his belt, and he can't get that if you're not allowing him to go to the AHL. So, if you guys don't know, between the CHL and the NHL, if you're a player coming from the CHL, the only way you can go to the AHL from the CHL is if your season is over and the AHL is still going, which is what Emmett Finney did. If you're over, I think 23, something like that. There's an age difference. Certain age that you have to be in order to not have to be in the CHL and be able to go to the AHL. Or if you've had 3 seasons under your belt in the CHL, then you're able to go into the AHL. Danielson had the ability to have played his 3rd season in the CHL before he, right after his contract year. So he's able to go to Grand Rapids next season. Emmett Finney's not, which, like I said, sucks. He was really good in the CHL, but I'm just worried that all of that potential is going to go to waste just being in the CHL, because he's playing in the OHL, which is probably one of the better CHL teams, but he's if he's an NHL caliber player, if you're drafted, if you were drafted in the NHL, no matter what round you're in, you're already better than everybody who hasn't been drafted, right? Anybody that wasn't drafted in an NHL draft is automatically not as good as players who were drafted in an NHL draft, at least in the eyes of NHL teams. I'm not saying they're bad players. I'm just saying that if you're drafted in an NHL draft, at least in the eyes of league NHL professionals, professional general managers, professional scouts, you are better than the people who were not drafted. There's a very long and drawn-out explanation to be saying the same exact fucking thing 7 times, but I hope you guys understand what I'm getting at. So I still think it's dumb, but I think this is the last season Finney will be in the OHL before he can come to the AHL, and hopefully being in the OHL and essentially just bullying like 16, 17-year-olds with his NHL draft capable talent is not going to stunt his growth. But yeah, anyways, back to the prospect games. Shai Buium is the only defensive prospect that I know of that Detroit has drafted that's going. And then all three goaltenders are Detroit prospects. You've got Carter Gylander, Landon Miller, and Gage Alexander. Landon Miller, we all know who Carter Gylander is. Gylander's likely going to be with the Toledo Walleye. Landon Miller, goaltender drafted this year in the 5th round, I believe. And Gage Alexander, who was part of the Fabry trade to the Anaheim Ducks. So, we'll see what he's made out of. I looked at his ECHL stats over in whatever Anaheim's ECHL affiliate is, and they weren't great. They were sub 900 save percentage good, but it's the ECHL. Those numbers are wildly random at this, realistically. So, it's interesting to see what happens. In NHL news, Leon Draisaitl signed a massive contract extension with the Edmonton Oilers, $14.4 million a year with, I don't even remember how much in signing bonuses. That's an insane amount. Granted, it is Leon Draisaitl. He is one of the best players in the world. He's quite possibly the second best player in the world. And yeah, it's well deserved. Edmonton didn't really have a leg to stand on. He's probably the best playoff performer in the league. So, he's obviously chosen to stay there. He didn't take the hometown discount this time, obviously. That doesn't surprise me at all. He already took a discount on his last contract, and Edmonton couldn't get it done with that money left, with the money he left them. So, fuck it, get your money, dude. I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna be someone who says, "Oh, that's gonna be a massive deal for Edmonton. They're not gonna be able to afford people." And while granted, yes, they are very quickly shaping up to be the Toronto Maple Leafs of the West. That being, they've got 3 or 4 incredibly high-paid players. Not that it's not deserved. In Toronto, Matthews deserves every penny he got. Nylander probably didn't deserve $11.5 million, just saying. Marner deserved his $10 million. Tavares, at the time the contract was signed, deserved his $10 million. And Edmonton, is no different. Connor McDavid's going to earn his, $16 million fucking dollars he's going to get. Draisaitl earned his for $14.4 million. Darnell Nurse did not earn his $9.5 million. And Evan Bouchard is probably going to earn his, $9.5 million. It's quickly shaping out to be the same deal. Now, granted, Edmonton does have they've got the luck of their big contracts are expiring as the salary cap is going up. So they've got a little bit of leeway to deal with. Not really, though, because Connor McDavid's probably going to shoot the rest, going to take up literally every penny worth of the how much the cap's going to go up next season, probably. So it really doesn't help them too much, but at the same time, it does help them a bit because they're able to throw more money at their best players to keep them on the team, and maybe have a little bit more to spend on the rest of the team. But that's yet to be seen. Obviously, we won't know how it goes until McDavid's contract comes up. We won't know how it goes until Bouchard needs to be re-signed. So it's I think both McDavid and Bouchard have to be re-signed after next season. So that could be a problem for him. But not my team, not my problem, I guess. But other than that, I don't have anything else to talk to you guys about today. I didn't even really make a list for this video because I just kind of wanted to shoot the shit. Side note, the Lions won last night. Oh my god, I'm really sick of Detroit sports giving me a heart attack and stressing me the fuck out when I shouldn't be stressed out, only to pull some heroic bullshit at the last possible second. It is so upsetting. but goddamn do I love these teams, but also fuck my sports teams. I cannot stand them, but I also love them. Please help me. I'm going mentally insane watching Detroit sports. You can't help me. I apologize for asking the impossible. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and or listening to the Flying Wheel podcast. Like I said, I do promise to try and bring these episodes semi-regularly. Once or twice a month is about as much as I can do right now. But we'll see how the rest of the year shapes up. Yada, yada, yada. All that good shit. All right. So thank you guys once again so much for listening, watching. Please don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter and listen to it wherever you get other episodes, wherever you get your podcast. Amazon, Apple, Spotify. I think I'm on Deezer. I think I'm on iHeartRadio. I'm pretty sure I'm on Audible. I'm on a lot of things, like YouTube as well. You can follow. There's a channel for it there. Like, there's a lot of places you can follow this podcast. Just go follow them all if you want. I don't care. If you're listening to this, you're probably following me at some point. Anyways, you can follow me personally at @the_McSanadian on X. You'll get updates about the podcast, and you get to see my general bullshittery. So, yep. Like I said, last time I will say this. Thank you guys so much for listening. And I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Take care, everybody. Adios.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink cause I think I'm going